So
welcome to the Coffee and Conversation of the DEI Committee of the American Society of Cardiac Surgeons. Coffee and Conversation is an educational program designed to address physician and patient-centered experiences related to diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, and justice through casual but expert conversation between surgeons. This conversation will be available for viewing to anyone with access to the Askers YouTube channel. This programming will be brought to you every quarter, so be on the lookout. Today is part 2 of the episode on balancing parenthood and career in surgery. I hope you logged in for part 1, or at least had time to watch the video. During that recording, we learned that infertility rate is high amongst physicians. We also learned why and how trainees and early career physicians can plan ahead for success. Today with me are colon and rectal surgeons and gynecologists who are going to discuss how they navigated this important topic throughout their careers. Can you have a great career and a great family? Is it either or can one have it all? Joining us is Dr. Philip Kondylis, a very well-seasoned and very experienced colorectal surgeon. He is my mentor. He has seen it all. He was a program director of colorectal surgery for Erie program for over 12 years, and recently a general surgery program director. Dr. Sharon Stein, known for her leadership roles and regarded by many as a great mentor. I learned she's also a coach, and I can't wait to hear her take on these topics. Dr. Erin King-Mullins is no stranger to all of us. She is the chair of DEI for Oscars, who's been doing a phenomenal job, who recently just had a baby, and still trailblazing. Dr. Obokhare is a very good friend out of Texas Tech, Amarillo. He's an assistant dean for faculty development, whom I've also seen give a great talk on physician burnout. Dr. Yvonne is an OB/GYN out of Mayo Clinic. And Dr. Ebere Azumah is a gynecologist, another coach, public health expert out of Harvard, and now in private practice in Baltimore. Welcome, folks. So the questions will really center around, 1, how to build an unshakable support system around you. 2, what hacks, what high performance habits have you developed that got you this far? And then we're going to talk about burnout. What are you doing to avoid burnout, accomplish your goals, accomplish your work responsibilities, and stay sane? We're also going to talk about how to bounce back from failures and setbacks. And finally, we'll talk about children. How did you decide? When? How many did you want it to have? Would you do anything differently? What would you advise the young female surgical resident, the young male resident looking to pursue a career in surgery or medicine? So let's go ahead and tackle the first topic. So how to build an unshakable support system. We all have built these amazing careers. Dr. Azumah, Dr. King-Mullins, can you both tell us about your family support structure and what it took to make that happen? And how does one build a nice support system?
Sorry, I think I was muted. Hey, everybody, thanks. So glad you're all here. I just wanted to briefly, say that I had this idea for this coffee and conversations actually before I got pregnant and had my recent child, but really just had some journeys with friends who were physicians who had had some difficulties, maybe conceiving, suffered a loss, but also I have male colleagues who, have difficulty in sometimes balancing family, burnout, and all of those types of things, especially if they are in a 2-physician household. So I'm excited to see the group here together tonight and follow up from the initial installation of this series. But, I think that how I built a quote unquote unshakable, support system is that I actually haven't built an unshakable support system. And I think all of us who have children know that everything is a potential wild card when it comes to having a family, especially with a busy career. the support system, can vary from day to day depending on, where you are in your career, what season of the year it is. Is it in school, out of school season? Are we dealing with daycare? The age of children. And so I think you make yourself more unshakable, as opposed to having an unshakable support system. You have to just be ready to bounce back and be prepared to do, whatever needs to be done. Um, and sorry, I missed what was the second part of the question.
I guess I think the second part is how does one build a support system? You may have answered
Yeah,
that.
yeah, there was. So then maybe I answered the second question and not the first question. Sorry, what was?
Right.
So what was the first question again? That's the recent that's the mommy brain. Sorry. So
So tell us about your family support structure and what it
sure.
took to make that happen.
Okay.
Um,
So we have a blended family. I have three bonus daughters. They're a little bit older. Twins are 16, the younger one's 14. I have a 3-year-old and a 3-month-old. Um, Part of the support system just comes from having that large immediate family. When we do have my bonus daughters with us, they are of age to help support and babysit and do some of the basics with the younger children, which is definitely helpful. Um, my husband's parents live here about 25, 30 minutes away, so that's helpful. And then my brother lives here as well. He doesn't babysit so much, but it's more so sometimes just coming over and hanging out on the weekends. So even if I'm here, he's entertaining the kids, so that, I can do other things. Um, and, and I actually have some friends who have been very helpful, who have children of similar age. So sometimes, a play date can help with your support structure. And I actually have a former patient, well, former slash current patient who has become like a part of our family. We bonded over time after my taking care of her, and then us learning more about each other. And she attended the same college I did years previously, and so we've actually created a little bit of a family bond. She's actually traveling with me to ASCRS to help watch the youngest one while I'm there, the 3-month-old. So, I think kind of like I initially stated when I got the questions a little bit backwards, you have to be unshakable. I think that's the biggest thing in all of this, because there's always going to be variables day to day when we're dealing with children. As we know, as surgeons, as physicians, every day can hold something different, and it's you that has to be the rock. You have to be the unshakable kind of variable in all of that. And so I think that's just how you make the support system and the network, work.
all right. Anyone can pitch in, but Dr. Azumah, I think I mentioned you earlier. What about you? How does one build a support system? I think that's one of the questions you want to have answered.
I think building the support system, as Erin has said, is believing in yourself and being unshakable. That no matter what, you will thrive. No matter what, you will succeed. Unlike Erin, I'm a single mom, so I have me and my daughter. So for me to be able to navigate what I do as a clinician, as a community advocate, I decided to have a nanny, right? So I needed someone to be present when I'm not physically present. So that's how I built my support system. And when my nanny is not around, I have recruited my daughter's grandmother, who helps out as well. And like Erin also said, creating a similar play date. I'm fortunate that I work closely with little kids. So our home has been the refuge for little kids. I remember on Facebook, someone was saying, oh, people love coming to their house to play with their son. And they were eerie about it. However, I was like, oh no, this is awesome. I have a single child. So any kid that wants to come is very, very welcome, because my child needs to know how to socially conduct herself as a only child. So basically, we have a play date. The girl comes over my house once a week and sleeps over. So my daughter, excuse me, is learning like the social skills. So again, everyone's family system structure is different, but the goal is to make it work for you. So that's the first question. I guess, family support and how to build support. Building support is being determined that you will succeed as a mother, regardless of what situation you find yourself. Back to you.
Good. I guess let me go ahead and ask Dr. Easy. Dr. Easy Obokhare, you have 3 beautiful children and your wife is a physician as well. So how do you manage life with a busy 2-physician household and still raise well-adjusted, balanced kids as a busy professional?
Well, the first thing I'll say is this: all the credit goes to my wife, okay? She does most and all of everything. But I think earlier on, we decided as residents, there is no perfect time to have kids. If you want to wait as a surgical resident until you're done with residency, then you have fellowship. By the time you wait until after fellowship, then you have your first job, and you want to perform in your first couple of years on your first job. So there's really no perfect time. So we decided to have 1 in residency, 1 in fellowship, and 1 in our first year out of training. So we did it all in that succession. We have them named after the cities. So one of them is named Cleveland, and one of them is named Shreveport. And the last one is named Amarillo. But the point here is, I realize for us, our call schedules can be very chaotic. You can imagine how difficult it is managing 1 call schedule. But when you add 2 surgeon call schedule and having to be on call in the ER, a few times we had to do the handover in the parking lot with the kids. One person is going home, one person is taking the kids, but we made it work. The first thing we do is make sure that our schedules are not overstressed. We try not to take call on the same day. Okay, that's the first thing. And we have layers of support systems. We have 1 nanny, and then we have a backup person, just in case that they're not available to pick up the kids. But we decided to live in a smaller city where we can drive to work in 10, 15 minutes. So that makes a big difference. So there's no traffic. I have 2 traffic lights to get to work. To drop the kids off, it takes 5 minutes to drop them off. So you have to plan your life by design. That way it makes it easier so you're not getting stressed. And I think that's how we made it work. But just communication. Good.
Dr. Stein?
So my husband's also a surgeon, so I kind of relate to a lot of what Dr. Obokhare said. We also have done different things. Sometimes we'll have family come into town, so we'll both take all the same weekend, and that gives us a little bit more time when we're not on call together. We have made our nanny was amazing when my daughter was really little, and just worked a ton, and we paid a lot of money. Like that was definitely something that we said it's worth it to pay whatever it takes to make sure that our kid was safe. And we have 1 daughter. Our daughter was safe and doing well. So I think that was a really big thing for us. And then we do a lot of stuff as a family. So my daughter's activities are almost all during the weekday. So on the weekends, whoever is home, we can hang out with her, right? We do things with her, like grocery shopping is a family weekly activity, and it's not always so much fun, but it's just about spending time together. And I think that's how you create well-adjusted kids, is that you prioritize them when you are there, and you put down your phone for part of the time, and you actually spend the time with them. And you listen to their stories, as silly as they might be or whatever it is. And you play games with them and do stuff like that. I think, to me, I mean, I don't know, my daughter's not grown yet, so we'll see how she turns out. But I think spending the time with them and trying to be present is one of the most important things, I think, in raising as well-adjusted kids as we can.
So those are very good comments and remarks. And since we're on the topic of children, I think it's the right time to talk about, which is the 5th element in this discussion, is children. I have two boys, and you said you have 1, Dr. Stein. Dr. Kondylis, I know you have 1, and Easy have 3, and Dr. Azumah has 1, and Dr. King-Mullins, you have 2 of your own and 3 bonuses, you said?
Yeah, so we have a tribe. We have a Brady Bunch. So we have total of 5 between us.
So the question is, how did you decide when and how many And would you do it any differently? And then we all have residents for the most part. What would you advise the young female surgical resident, male surgical resident looking to pursue a career in surgery? Let's start with you, Dr. Kondylis. You've been program director for colorectal surgery over 12 years, and also general surgery residency program director as well. So you have a lot of input here. Why don't you go ahead, Dr. Kondylis?
I've learned that my daughter is more insightful than the average board examiner. They know when you're present. They know when you're distracted. They let you know in different ways. When she was little, she would hide my shoes, so it was hard to go into the hospital. And as she's gotten older, she just calls me out on the fact that I'm not listening or I'm distracted. They know you better than you think they do. So you have to be very careful. When you tell them you're going to do something, you really have to move heaven and earth to make sure it happens. And if they have something they enjoy, you have to be a part of it. My daughter is very interested in Krav Maga. So I am the dummy that she beats. When she was little, it was cute. Now that she's older, we're going to invest in a mannequin that she can beat because I'm getting too old to take the beating regularly. But you have to find something that they love and you have to be a part of it. And yeah, you have to carve out time because work is a black hole. Once you're within the event horizon, it will suck time and effort and energy and sort of cast a husk out the other side if you're not careful.
Okay, that's good. But
for us, it was.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, for us, sort of was relatively simple. We have the one daughter, and it was when I was not even on my first job. We're relatively older parents. So it took a little while for sort of things to work out in terms of kids. And we have one, and it was sort of, my wife told me we were having one, and I can't really argue. It's that simple. She bears the brunt, really. Sort of, I should be apologetically saying it, that sort of our daughter is well adjusted because of a superhuman effort on the part of my wife to make sure that she's had as normal a child upbringing as possible. Because if your career has you moving around, it can be a lot like a military career. Sort of every sort of half dozen years, you're packing up and you're in a new house, a new school. It's not necessarily the easiest for children.
So you wouldn't do anything differently. This is very happy with that. Okay. So moving on to Dr. Erin King-Mullins. Go ahead and take on this question. And the second part of the question is, what advice would you give to that young female surgical resident, the male surgical resident?
Sure. So, I was one of those that kind of listened to what everybody said in the sense of, just finish everything first, have the career later. And so I was actually fortunate. I met, for those of you who have seen the video from the initial one or will see the video, Dr. Desiree McCarthy-Keith. She practices here in the Atlanta metro area, and I, met her through some social events, and found out she was always an advocate of, by the time we're having these meetings and we're done with training, and if you haven't had kids and you want kids, you're behind the 8 ball because your fertility, as a woman, dramatically drops after a certain point. And so, I admit I was afraid that, things wouldn't work out. And I was just blessed and fortunate that when the time came for us to decide, to try to have children, took a little while, but we, did not need any additional assistance. But I almost, I had her definitely on speed dial after, after those so many months of trying. If it doesn't work, especially when you're over 35, you don't have that year like they give to, you know, everybody else. Like it's really more like at the 6 month mark if you haven't. And so we like barely made that mark. But um, you know, I just kind of echo the sentiment of what Dr. Obokhare said earlier. Like it's, you know, there's never a good time. You know, if you're a go-getter, whether, you know, it's the mother or the father, or, you know, whatever way in which you want to have a family, there's never a good time. And so it's always going to be a struggle. It's always going to be an adjustment. It's never going to be, you know, everything is never going to go as planned. It's just, you know, that's just how the world is. And so once you make that decision and you're comfortable with moving forward, you know, you should move forward. You know, and my advice again, you know, to the young, you know, male or female resident, um, no matter their uh, familial status, married or unmarried, you know, same sex or different sex partner, whatever, you know, it's your personal decision. Parenting is, and becoming a parent is protected. So, as far as whether or not it's giving a birth child or you're adopting, you know, surrogacy, all of those things, you know, those are protected individuals as far as for that process of birthing that child. And so I would advise you to know the laws and rules of your state and of your organization and of your employer and of your, you know, training program, so that, you know, you can be supported in creating the family, you know, at the time and in the means you want to.
Excellent. Let me bring in Yvonne. Yvonne, you over at Minnesota, over at Mayo Clinic, and you have a ton of residents as well. The same question. How many kids and the trainees under you? What have you seen?
I have one child, a 4-year-old son named Zurich. It took an insurmountable amount of effort to get him here. We call him our miracle baby because I had such a complicated pregnancy. I thought you know, it was really meant for you to be here. I was 40 years old when I had him. My husband is 7 years my senior, so he was 47. I had planned on having 4 kids, but I think in my head, unlike designing our careers where, you know, everything is planned out, you know, we know that medical school is 4 years, OB/GYN residency 4 years. I did a global health fellowship. I had sort of everything sort of planned and tracked. And I was definitely one of those people who said, you know, every year I would kind of like reassess where am I with my career. Never did the same thing with family. So that's one thing I would tell residents. And sometimes we don't do that because you don't have a partner as of yet. But I think it's still helpful just going through the process of, you know, keeping that at the forefront of your mind. What does my family look like? And perhaps that might change. I cannot possibly imagine having 4 children at this time. My son has a whole team to take care of him. And I think that we're blessed that we can do that. My husband's in aviation, but we've got an au pair, we've got a nanny, a backup nanny. And he's one of those kids who, you know, we meet people and they're like, oh, you know, let me help you take care of him. He's so cute. I want him to play with X. And we're like, great. So he's got like several community grandmothers that that have grandchildren of their own. And they want him to play with their kids. And, you know, it's worked out for us. My son is on a campaign to have a sibling currently. So we are in discussions of what might that look like. And I mean, and he's adamant. He talks about it and he's planned his room and where the baby's room will be. And he's given the baby his, you know, all of his nursery items already. So he's on the mission. So I just tell residents to, you know, don't let it be the thing that's an afterthought. That being said, I don't know if I'll have enough of the patience and the grace that I have now compared to if I had had a child earlier. I think sometimes one of the things I find, especially for our family, is that tincture of time has given me the wherewithal to kind of look at my career trajectory and say, you know, I'm okay with, you know, having to kind of like put pieces together and it might not necessarily be perfect, but this is how it fits. However, if I could go back to my younger self, I would say, you know, plan that family, have that discussion early. When I met my husband, he already knew I want to get married and I want to have kids. And I was looking at him like, okay, let's get to know each other, step one. But he had obviously thought about it and he knew what he wanted. And I was just sort of, you know, hey, if it works out, great. If not, yeah, you know, I know it's what I want, but yeah, I'll kind of work around it. We oftentimes don't have these discussions with our trainees for a number of different reasons. Sometimes it's just the pressure of work. Sometimes it's the fact that we just don't talk about it, you know. So this is definitely a worthwhile discussion. And I tell our trainees now exactly what's being said here. There's never a good time to plan. Have a discussion with your partner, find out where you are. Know that parenting is a very personal decision, but also know that, you know, for better or worse, the clock isn't necessarily on our time, you know, on our side. So you do have to make that decision and then go with it, because there isn't really going to be a perfect time to do it.
Yeah, a lot there. So let's switch gears a little bit. Okay, we're gonna talk about the hacks. And there's in order to run a family, it's like a corporation, right? So there's got to be some high performance habits that you must possess, that you must develop really to be successful. So Dr. Stein, you're a leadership coach. To get this far, Dr. Stein, there's some skill sets you had to develop. The so-called high performance habits. What would you say are the hacks that you've developed over the years to make more time? And Dr. Azumah, I'll also get you to chime in here since you're a coach as well.
So what I would say I think is really important is it sounds funny, but to take time for yourself. I think it's really hard to go from a high pressure job to a house where there are demands on you and kids want to like all of your time and all of your attention as soon as you get home. And it can be as simple as like stopping in the car and listening to a song on your way home and just taking that time for yourself. Or for me, it's usually I wake up at like 5:30 and I go work out first so that I take care of myself at the beginning of the day. And I think that that's one of the hacks I would say is that you've got to find some time for yourself. As pressured as you might feel by work and home and kind of like, where do I get this? You've got to take some time for yourself. The second hack I would say is pay for everything that doesn't matter to you. I see enough poop at work, right? I don't need to see poop at home. So someone else can wash my toilets, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're colorectal surgeons, right? Like that is not something that gives me any bit of joy. And so paying for somebody to do things like that is really important. And I'll give you one more and I'll let someone else go. But the other thing that for me, I think is to walk in your own path. It's really easy to compare what I'm doing to what Dr. Obokhare is doing, to, what Dr. King-Mullins is doing, and whether or not I'm measuring up. And I made the decision about my daughter was about a year old to work only 4 days a week. And everyone said, gosh, your academic career is going to be over. This is going to be the worst thing you ever did. I will tell you, I was more comfortable at work because on Tuesday night, I could stay as late as I needed to for a case and knew that Wednesday morning I was going to have some time with my kid, right? And that made a huge difference in my ability to say, this is okay to work really hard because now I have some time for my kid and for my house and for myself to do that. And it made me more academically productive. It made me more clinically productive. Best thing I did. And that's not to say that works for everybody, but I think getting off of the comparison game and thinking about what you need to do is really important in making your work.
Dr. Azumah.
Wow, Dr. Stein, I would borrow some of what you've said. You said something about delegating, or in my opinion, I'll consider it outsourcing. It's very important to outsource things that are not priority. For me, personally, the high performance habit is having grace, knowing that you're not perfect, right? Like being so quick to forgive yourself when you're wrong, when you don't do things perfectly well. That's just basically the biggest. And also know that there's really no perfect parenting guide. Really, there really isn't. Now I have grace for my parents that were not perfect. I just wish they told me that they were learning along the way too, so that I could be more forgiving. They didn't tell you that. They pretended they were perfect, right? So, but there's a contrast in my parenting style. I make sure my child knows that I'm not perfect. However, I'm here to guide her and we're going to journey together. So for me, a high performance habit is just learning to forgive myself and the willingness to do better the next time. Back to you.
Dr. Kondylis.
Well, when you're a resident and someone asks you if you can do something, it's yes. And it never prepares you for being an attending and for when to say no. There are always more meetings, there are always more seminars. Hey, do you mind running the physiology lab? We need someone to take over this for the residents. And there's terrible mission creep. You have to find out your way of saying no to things that are not mission critical. And oftentimes within your institution, it could be the CMO, it could be the section chief, it could be the chair. They all have sort of a subtlety to how you say no, but you have to have your way of pushing back on sort of a tidal wave of additional responsibilities. Because with each coming year, no one ever comes to say that you've got a lot of committees. Why don't we drop you from one? They're always looking to add you to one where someone retired or transferred or left or didn't show up. And there's an art to saying no. Not that I'm an expert at it, but I've learned that you got to say no to some things. You can't do everything that is pushed in your direction.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, and I'm just sorry to interrupt, but I'm just going to jump in. You know, I feel you just reminded me of a saying that I heard somewhere. It's like, who do you ask to get something done, right? You ask the busiest person. You don't ask, the person, you don't ask the person that doesn't have, is only on doing one thing, because usually it's that busiest person that's always saying yes, but they're getting stuff done. So yeah, I forget exactly how the quote goes, but that's what it reminds me
If you
of.
say you're going to do it and you do it, it just beckons more work coming in your direction.
Exactly.
Yeah, they always give it to whoever gets the job done quickly. 'Cause everybody wants to keep the work going and moving. But we're gonna get into burnout soon, but I'm not getting into it just yet. But I want to kind of stay on these hacks and some of the high performance habits. Our audience are listening. Easy, let me bring you in. You own a business. You're a busy surgeon. You're a busy father. Go ahead at it.
Okay. Well, thanks for the question, Rob. I own a rental property management company, and I manage the rental properties myself. And the goal was to try to get into financial freedom and do something outside of medicine, because you have to expand your humanity. And that is something I've realized, that being a busy surgeon, doing research and teaching medical students, and also being involved with your own personal business, you have to have ways to get things done. There's a saying, you have to look at things in 3 different ways. There are 3 different buckets you can put any activity. You can automate it, which means you make sure it is done automatically. Okay, so things like that you need in your household, for example, you can have them automatically delivered to your doorstep. You can have a cleaner come every 2 weeks to the house to clean your house. Automate it. The next thing is, if you can automate it, delegate it. Have someone else do it for you. At one point, I was always mowing my lawn. So on the weekend, I spend about 2-3 hours mowing my lawn. Then I just told myself, this is a big waste of my time. After that, I have to take a 3-hour nap after spending 2 hours mowing the lawn. It was 5 hours on the weekend rather than spending with your kids. So, I have someone that does that for me now. But the most important thing is that you can also delete it. And I think Phyllis Kondylis mentioned that. You don't have to say yes to everything. Life is like a buffet. We go through life trying to pile on things onto our plate as we go through the line. But remember, in the buffet, you can always go back and get some more. So find ways to always say no to things, even though it's something that is dear to your heart. You can always go back to it later. but having that automation, it's crucial for success.
I love that. Life is a buffet. Definitely. Let's see who else I need to call on. Dr. Yvonne, you train residents as well, don't you?
I do.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that it is honestly is still a learning art for me, but I try to when I say I'm going to be there, I'm going to be there, especially when it comes to my son. So oftentimes he does not remember the times that I'm not there because he's constantly going back to the time that I was there. I would make sometimes an entire day his day. So when I was off, I said, what do you want to do today? Completely your day. Whatever he wanted to do within reason, that's what we did, which unfortunately meant we ate a lot of cotton candy. We went to a random fair. I let him ride on rides that I would typically be like, wait, what are we doing? But we did those things. And he talked about it for the next 2 days. Oh, mama, are we going back to the fair? When are we going to, so that really just, for me, validated that I didn't really have to feel guilty with the prior 2 days that I wasn't at home for all of the little things that he did. I know it doesn't make it up, but really quality time is the time you invest at that time. I started thinking back to my late father and the times we spent together. I'm originally from Liberia, West Africa. I don't quite remember like my father being there every single day holding my hand. But the times that he was there was so, like etched in my head that to this day, I can still recall the day he asked me, what do you want to be? And I said, doctor. We played a game and I had a different thing every week. But he would actually invest in looking for things, if I wanted to be a teacher, he would say, what is it? Let's find out what it takes to be a teacher. I want to be a doctor. What does it take to be a doctor? But it's actually those things I personally think that makes a difference. Again, it's not as perfect as being there for your child all the time, but it's one thing I tell our residents that, yes, you work a lot, but set that time aside and really just be there. Don't answer your pager when you're off if you don't need to, and just be there with the kid because that's what they'll remember. So that's one hack I have. I also like the automate and in delegation. Oftentimes, especially as women, we have this streak where we're like, oh, I'll just do it myself, right? My husband and I have this thing all the time where I'll ask him to dress the child and then he'll put on something and I'm like, I can't believe you put our child in that. Like, what exactly were you thinking? I'll just do it myself, right? But I have learned over time that it is okay. So there are times when my child might show up in PJs and that's okay. It's not going to kill him. He's dressed and it's just fine. So that's the other hack I would say that, as you're delegating, understand that it might not be perfectly the way you want it to go, but if it's done, it's fine.
Can I add one thing to that too? I just kind of like amplifying what you were saying. I have friends who are teachers. I have friends who do all different types of things, and they still have, I like to call it mommy guilt, and both daddies get it too, right? That they're not there for every single moment. And I think the lesson that we're teaching them is that it's okay to have time for yourself. It's okay to be doing something that's fulfilling to me, right? Like that's an important lesson for me to teach my daughter so that she someday will do things that are important to her. And I think we all have guilt for not being there for every minute, but I also think that we're teaching our kids really important lessons about making choices in life and that it's okay to do things that are good for you. And it's okay to have interest outside of just them, and life's not just about them.
Yeah.
That's good.
And also that what you're doing is really important. Right. Oh, sorry, Phil. I was just going to mention that what you're doing, I mean, from a very young age, you can teach your child that I'm helping people. This is what I do to help people. And over time, build upon it. I think part of being a good parent is also teaching your child how to be good citizens. And part of that is really demonstrating how you are a good citizen, right? So time spent away is moms helping the other moms and their babies. and then continue to build on that so that some of that angst of not being there is put aside because they understand what you do and they understand the importance of it.
The perfect parent is a highly theoretical entity, regardless of what job you have or
Yeah.
your sort of family relationships. It's literally impossible to be there 100% of the time. And we tend to focus really on our sort of worst days rather than our average days, and hold ourselves at time to an unrealistic standard.
And it's like, as you were saying, Dr. Yvonne, just when you had that time, just doing whatever they wanted. And yes, you obviously didn't want your child eating cotton candy all day, but then just taking a step back and realizing, like, I mean, as long as they're not addicted to cotton candy, as long as they're not
Right.
eating it all day, every day, it's going to be fine. And so, I'll just give, for example, this past weekend, here as of late, I haven't had as much time with my 3-year-old as I typically used to. She was a COVID baby. She was born 3 weeks before the world shut down. And so for the first, basically 2 years
Oh.
of her life, there was almost like no day that ever went by without her having see me or without me really being there to put her to bed, because life in the world was different. So fast forward to me transitioning, from my employed position to, now starting my own practice in between time when we're waiting for some legalities and non-competes and all that stuff. I had to do some locums work at a hospital that was, an hour and a half away. So sometimes I was spending the night away. Then all of a sudden I'm pregnant. So I'm trying to start a practice and I'm pregnant and I end up staying in the hospital longer than I needed to. And then we had some medical issues with my youngest son and we were kind of in and out of the hospital and visiting specialists. And so I wasn't there as much as she was used to. But what we would do was take times that, yes, I'm putting you to bed tonight and we're going to read an extra long story. And guess what? I'm actually going to let you watch a little bit of TV tonight before you go to bed so we can, have fun and laugh at, I can see whatever you want to see and I can laugh with you. Or this past weekend, we woke up when everybody was still asleep and we went to get donuts. We go for a ride and we sit there and not only do we buy donuts for everybody at the house, we sit there and we eat a donut together. And and you have a conversation. Well, what's your favorite donut? Well, what's your favorite color? Who's your friends at school? Those types of things that doesn't take a lot of effort. It doesn't take a lot of money, but it's valuable attention, me time that, your child will remember.
Good. This is very lively, very, very lively. I'm gonna go ahead and shift gears and let's talk a little bit about burnout. And I will have each one of you tell us what you do to prevent burnout. And have you thought about it? Easy. Let's start with you. I know you. That's one of your passions, and go ahead and talk for 1 minute.
Okay, so let's talk about burnout. Burnout happens to everybody. It's not a matter of if it happens, it's a matter of when it happens. I, for one, thought I was very resilient to burnout, but it hit me. And I have witnessed the effect of burnout. I remember a few years back, a very close colleague of mine walked past my house, and we chatted for about 10 minutes. And 2 weeks later, he committed suicide. He was a surgeon, a local surgeon in Amarillo. And that really got me thinking about burnout. And I asked myself, is there something I could have told him when we spoke that day that could have prevented it? Because we hit that lull as surgeons. We take care of very sick patients, very difficult situations. We have challenging patients, but something pushes us over the edge to get burnt out. And burnout affects more than half of US physicians. And in fact, about 80% of doctors have symptoms or signs of burnout. So this is an epidemic, and it's something that we have to hit head on. Now, I'll just go straight to the prevention because most of us, we have experienced it in some way or the other. For me, I did experience it. It was taking 15 days of call a month and building a house that was way over budget, twice over budget, realizing that I'll have to work for the next 30 years in that way to pay off the house. And come to Jesus moment, or that was my epiphany moment. And I realized I have to find, number one, finding a hobby outside of medicine. Okay, most of us I would say every person that goes into medical school, you have to have a high IQ to do it. We're very smart people. But the point is, we're so focused on the 1% of life, which is medicine, and we've neglected 99%. There's so much outside that we can learn and grow from. So I'll say have a hobby outside of medicine, something, eat well. Our diet affects everything else, affects your energy level all day long. Sleeping well, sleep is a big part of burnout, because most folks that get burnout, they lose sleep. That's the first thing that goes through the window. And when sleep goes, your diet goes, exercise goes through the window. But the one thing that can really prevent burnout is having a community, having someone you can call, someone you can talk to, usually someone that understands what you're going through, that will not pass the same judgment as your coworker. So you need a safe space to talk. I remember in residency, I was hitting a wall, and I was having a trouble with an attending who was just very, very rude. I didn't know who I could talk to. And I spoke to a co-resident who was 1 year ahead of me. And I said, can you imagine what this guy did? He stuck me with a needle and insulted me in the process. And I was going to punch him out. I realized that was going to end my career. And I'm glad I did not, okay, because I was a bit behind bars today. But I called him. I said, his name is Roy. I said, Roy, I'm going through this hard time with this surgeon, and this is just so abusive, and I think it's personal. And he leaned forward and said, mine was worse. That's all he said. And that just changed me completely, and I did not take it personal. Okay, so the point is having a pair and having someone you can talk to helps with burnout.
Yeah, definitely having a community is, I think, is my top of my list. Mastermind group, people you can talk to. Easy, we've known each other for what, 12 years, and there's now no week that we don't talk to each other. It seems like, right? So that definitely it goes a long way as far as knowing that you're not alone in whatever you're going through. I think all our the human race is basically the same. Everybody's going through something. Knowing that you're not alone on that definitely goes a long way. So, so we're still on this topic on burnout, Dr. Kondylis. You were kind of going in that route, if I interrupted. So someone said, "Don't let your mouth overload your back," right? How do you know when to say no to chairmen, to section leaders, CEOs, administrators, and most importantly, when to say no to yourself,
Saying no to yourself is the hardest, because you're often sort of blind to sort of the load you're carrying, because you become accustomed to a new baseline slowly. Sort of like the bathtub water gets hot slowly before you know it, it's boiling, kind of thing.
Right.
But I reached the point where I decided, what do I enjoy? I enjoy sort of teaching time with the residents and the fellows. I enjoy research. I do not enjoy sort of manipulating the electronic health record on a case-by-case basis. I don't like arbitrary changes going on in the section or the department. Sort of the flavor of the week where we're going to try this and see what happens, or the type of meetings where you go and it's a replica of the meeting from 3 years ago, not this sort of these permanent standing committees that haven't accomplished anything and never will. If you want me at a meeting, I need an agenda. If you don't send me the agenda, I'm not even going to RSVP. No, I'm just not coming, because I've reached a point where I've grown selective with my time. And eventually the section leader comes to me, "Hey, you didn't come to the last 7 meetings." I said, well, nothing was going to happen. I've sort of entered the phase in my life where they have to come to me, because when I go to them, I've never been reinforced that it was useful. But when they come to me more open-minded about what will it take to get you back to the meetings. And you have to sort of stick to it a little bit. Sort of chairmen are more dangerous because they control a pocketbook. They can sort of choke off your pet projects if they really want to. But sort of my experience with the hospital people is that they have much more flexibility than they're willing to admit. And at the end of it, I'm content to tell them that I'm the only guy at the meeting not being paid to be at the meeting. It's part of your regular working hours. I came to the hospital 3 or 4 hours before you, and I hung around for 2 hours for this meeting. So I'm deep into family time before the meeting starts. So you can either be happy I come to the meetings where you send me an agenda that I'm interested in, or you outright have to pay me to be there. Sort of, yeah, and sometimes that means that you're in a position where sort of the health system you're in wants more than you're willing to give. And sort of, for me at least, I have made sort of transitions based on that. I just wasn't willing to do what they wanted to do sort of on their time frame.
All right. For the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and hit the last topic. And this last topic is something that everyone, I'm sure, has been involved in and has been affected by is how to bounce back from failures and setbacks. And, you know, we all had setbacks, so-called failures, right? And I've been taught that failures are opportunities to do it again, this time more intelligently. That's one of my mentors, that's what he said. And one of my other mentors also says that failures are just schools, okay? Just schools. So Dr. Azumah, how does one bounce back from a setback?
That's an important question, especially at least for me. Things would happen, and I think I have this bias, but the higher your calling, the more the experiences, because your experiences shapes you. It shapes you to be more empathetic towards others. I value all my setbacks, be it a car accident that basically left me 30% burnt, second to third degree burns. That happened shortly after residency. So now when I see someone that's hospitalized or a burnt patient, I get it. I actually connect very well with burnt patients, you know. I remember seeing a patient walked in and was covering their scars, and I could relate. I was like, oh goodness, can I show you mine? We were like comparing notes on how, like, our burns and how it, you know, just a different experience. And if you do a survey on me, most people will say Ebere relates well. I'm extremely empathetic. I've become a better person. So I accept every setback because in the end, I see it as making me better. In life, I think in the end, when we're on our dying bed, we want to say we've made a difference or we're better than when we came into the world. So one step is just accepting it and knowing and having hope that no matter what, things will get better. And to be transparent, it has, right? So when I was in my sick bed, I didn't know what would happen, you know, but now I'm a mother to a very beautiful girl. So I always smile because I'm glad I didn't give up. I'm glad I took one day at a time during the deep or during the valley moments. Thanks.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Azumah. That was impactful. Dr. Kondylis.
Well, I break it up into two categories. I operate in the pelvis, so that makes me humble. Bad things will eventually happen, no matter how careful you are. You'll have outcomes you're not happy with. M&M is sort of fantastic for sort of thinking through, moving forward. Where I struggle is that your real life doesn't have an M&M. you can't go to a meeting in your living room and talk about how you messed up at the birthday party or the piano recital, how you let your child down. Because when they're disappointed and they're old enough to clearly express their disappointment to you, there's no sort of M&M ritual where you come out the other side feeling better about it. So those are about the only sleepless nights I have anymore, is that if I feel like I've sort of done poorly as the parent. And those are still a struggle. I wish I had a sort of a seamless path through that. I'm stuck in the phase of trying to avoid those situations still. I haven't really figured out how to manage them. But I imagine for most surgeons, you're accustomed to technical problems at work. It's the technical problems at home that are more difficult.
Well, let's ask someone who knows how to manage some of these things. Dr. Stein, what do you think? What do you think about getting a coach to get through these dark times? I mean, I personally think everyone needs a coach, you know, not just during the dark times, but during the spring and summers of life, right? So you can avoid the winters. Folks tend to think that coaching is for those who actually need help. Actually, on the contrary, I think coaching is for overachievers. Dr. Stein, can you tell us why you think everybody needs a coach?
So I would say because everyone has winters, right? Or maybe you like winters, because if you think about it, I like actually a Nelson Mandela quote, which is, you know, I do not lose. I either win or learn. And you won't, if you don't fail, you don't have that opportunity to learn and to do better. And my own like personal motto has kind of become fail better, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're going to fail, like expectation that you're not going to fail is just unrealistic, is what I would say. And so I think the idea of a coach is a couple different things. One is a coach is like a practice, you know, like when like if you played sports, you practice with your coach, right? And that's the idea, is that you can read a self-help book. You can read about different techniques for doing things, but how do you actually apply them in the situation? You know, like I can read any football book I want, you know, like about how to be like, okay, I'm going to be, you know, Peyton Manning, I'm going to be whoever, right? That doesn't mean I can actually do it. I have to practice it. Mm-hmm. A coach gives you the opportunity to practice those things before you try it out on people where it's higher stakes. And that is like, I think the cool thing, whether it's figuring out, where do I want to go? Do I say yes or no to this opportunity? How do I get over this failure that was really meaningful to me? It was really hurt. How do I make that into a positive learning experience? That's what a coach will practice with you, right? So if you have the whole world figured out, maybe you don't need a coach, right? But most of us constantly are meeting obstacles in our way, whether it's, I don't know how to talk to you in the way, you're not understanding me, I just failed at something, whatever it is. And so the coach is kind of like your personal like practice squad to like figure out, how do I do this better? And that's why for me, coaching is so fun, because it's so much fun to watch somebody get it and all of a sudden go, hey, I can do that. Like I have that really high stakes meeting coming up. I'm going to nail it. I know what I want to say. I know where I want to go. I know what yes or no I want to do. So I don't know. Dr. Azumah may have additional things to say.
Okay.
Dr. Azumah, do you? Right.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And Dr. Rob saying that coaching is for people of high value or high stakes people, because yes, I love how you analyze it. It's a way to like prepare for the real battle. I definitely think that my coaching career, becoming a coach, gave me the tools and the skills necessary to move forward during my valley moment. So I definitely agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, you know, coaching is, like I said earlier, is for overachievers. So that is why everybody needs a coach. For those of us who are overachievers on this platform, how can we reach you, or people are listening, Dr. Stein, how can they reach you?
So either you can, if you're ASCRS member, you can just email me directly, is one of those things, through Facebook. And I'm actually launching, probably by the time this actually goes live, a program for women surgeons called the Surgeons Lounge. And you'll be able to find that at thesurgeonslounge.org, which is a group coaching program that we're launching this week. I'm really excited. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, awesome. Well, this has been very, very, very productive. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I do want to say thank you so much, Dr. Toba, Dr. Kondylis, Dr. Azumah, Dr. Stein, Dr. Erin King-Mullins, and Dr. Obokhare. This is Balancing Parenthood and Career in Surgery, and I've learned a lot. I hope the audience also learned a lot. A huge thanks to the production team for putting this webinar together. As mentioned, the Coffee and Conversation programming will be brought to you quarterly. Be on the lookout for the next episode. I am your host, Dr. Robert Amajoy. Until next time.